May this be. Hi, everyone. This is Daniel Giamario on the monthly video blog. And the topic today is the Virgo Enigma. And I have the great pleasure of being joined by a Virgo moon and a Virgo rising. And also, I am a Venus in Virgo conjunct Saturn. And this is a topic that has been extremely important to me throughout my entire astrological career. I'll get back to that story in a moment. But why don't we just take a look at this time period we're in now and why we are putting attention on the Virgo Enigma at this time period. The Virgo Enigma, meaning the mystery of Virgo. And it certainly has been misunderstood, at least during my lifetime. So let's see why we're putting our attention on this now. So that, yes. You know, so you'll all be listening to this somewhere around the full moon, since this goes into our full moon newsletter. And this gives us really a tremendous opportunity right now to dive into one of the most important things about our paradigm in our school, which is a way of understanding the signs in relationship with the constellations. And clearly, I mean, most everybody who follows astrology is aware that we have this full moon with the sun in Virgo. And we also have so many other Virgo elements, 2 consecutive new moons in Virgo in a row. The alignment soon coming up of Mercury with the sun in Virgo. Mercury having just gone into Virgo. Also the alignment with the South Node at that particular time period with Mercury in the sun. And then also the eclipse season that begins right around now, actually. I mean, just a few days before the full moon is the beginning of the eclipse season, which is highlighting the Virgo-Pisces axis. So there's a lot, but then meanwhile, just so I can show you a very interesting feature, Mars at the time of the full moon is at 20 Libra. Now, where Mars is moving through the constellations is through the Priestess constellation. So we're going to be kind of weaving back and forth between how we view the sign of Virgo and then what actually the constellation, which is a very different thing really than the sign, although there is certainly a relationship between the two. And so therefore we're going to be referring to the Priestess constellation. Now I've written an article last year at the time period of the Virgo new moon, and I reprinted that in last month's newsletter. And it's we're not going to take the time of this conversation today to go into everything here, but I'm referring this to you so you can take a deeper dive into this if this is of interest. Inspired by the Virgo new moon, what does in Virgo mean anyway? And it's going through this interrelationship between the sign and the constellation and the really powerful sacred feminine mysteries that are associated with the stars of the Priestess constellation. Now, we're going to maybe just spend some time here looking at, from the perspective of our school, how we view Virgo. But what I did want to just bring up a personal story. Back in the 70s, and I think there's still the remnants of this today, the sign that was most disparaged was Virgo. So much so that there would be people in an astrological meeting that would be embarrassed to say they had something in Virgo. The mainstream view of Virgo, I thought was not giving it didn't really fully understand it. So I spent maybe the first 20 years of my astrological career being a champion of Virgo. And on a personal level, by having Venus in Virgo conjunct Saturn, my greatest teachers have been women with a strong Virgo archetypal element. So sometimes that training was not the easiest training, but I'm certainly very thankful for it. And in our school, a lot of people have actually come to the school because of the unique perception of Virgo that exists in the Turning of the Ages Mystery School. So let's tune in here to the basic material first. And I'm certainly inviting Marianna and Lizzie to also put in their thoughts about this. So we have the Virgo Mystery School, and yes, in our school we call the signs a mystery school. So please understand, we're not here specifically talking about whether your sun sign is in Virgo. So like none of us here sitting together on Zoom have the sun in Virgo. But we have the lineage Virgo, Lizzie, and current life intent Virgo, Marianna, and then my own projected image of the sacred feminine being Virgo with Saturn. So we put this in a category. In regular astrology, this would be placed in the so-called mutable signs. We call it in service to spirit. Like Virgo could be thought of as Gaia herself. And it's feminine, archetypally feminine, and it's an earth sign. And its intention is to bring spirit into matter in order to honor it. The other earth signs have other objectives. Taurus, just to enjoy the pleasure of having a physical incarnation, and Capricorn in order to understand it, structure it, get practical results with it, But Virgo, it's really an honoring of the pattern, the sacred patterning of the cosmos, of the expression of, as you will see in some of the card imagery that follows, of Spider Woman herself. And one other key concept of the Virgo Mystery School, and this comes up in any work on any individual charts. The number one question for Virgo is, what is your sacred work? And we use the expression sacred work as what is in the ordinary culture is called, what is your calling? And that is distinct from what is my successful career? It can be a successful career, but it's different than a householder profession. It's like something associated with being honoring the patterning of the goddess herself. It invokes sacred space, ceremonial participation, and weaves the web of life. Notices, maintains, and realigns existing patterns of the earth and the patterning of the soul, impersonal and complete unto themselves. So it's this version of sovereignty and autonomy that is associated with it. In the great language of Esther Harding in her seminal book called Women's Mysteries, it is in that book that she refers to Virgo as being one unto herself, one unto herself. And so when the appellation that's generally given to Virgo, Virgin Priestess, the Virgin is not associated with no sex or pre-sex. It has to do with a wholeness or a purity that exists that is not violated in any way. So it's an inviolate sacredness of one's sacred space. So these are some of the main ingredients of the Virgo Mystery School. And the way that it works in our school is represented by those on the call today. I am learning about it through the sacred feminine. And Lizzie is her lineage, her entire lineage was Virgo, meaning like she used to be Virgo.
And I also have North Node in the 6th house. So
Right.
I am redoing some of that, but yeah.
So that ingredient of the sacred work issue is also in your current life intent. And then Marianna, Virgo rising, so not this, it's all kinds of other things, of course, on your chart, that are not related to Virgo, but in our view, if you have a Virgo rising, all life questions can be answered, at least generally, by applying the questions to the rising sign. You know, that's always the last analysis. You know, is it serving Virgo and the sacred elements of the Virgo mystery school?
And as I'm Virgo rising, that being my mystery school and not coming from Virgo, you know, one thing that has really added to my journey is having to understand all three worlds and see them as sacred, because I feel like a lot of my path is learning about that innocence and purity that comes from the wounding from my lineage. And so I want to say this, coming into the web of life and honoring all as sacred and seeing the connections on the patterns and how much that has always been a part of my life. And when I apply it in this paradigm, it opens up a whole nother level for me.
I want to just make thank you for that. I wanted to make another comment regarding the word pattern, which is the most important word really for this mystery school. In the Emerald Tablets, that most people have heard of that in the astrological world, it begins with, you know, the statement that most everyone is familiar with, as above, so below. But about 5 or 6 lines down in the Emerald Tablets is the marvelous statement, in the consideration of the one thing is its pattern, capital P. And that's a deeper sense of what we mean by in service to spirit, and being connected to that pattern, being able to analytically perceive it and then be in service to it and honoring of it. So let's continue by looking at the 3 images that are from the Divination card deck that we use in the school. And our card deck has 64 cards in it, and 3 of them have to do with Virgo mysteries. The mystery school itself, the expression of the Virgo goddess, or the expression of the sacred feminine that is associated with Virgo, and then the masculine version of it. We'll have some very interesting things to share later in our conversation when we relate all of this to personal relationship and intimacy and what is actually required for intimacy to happen, and to get beyond this sort of mainstream criticism of Virgo as being just cold and picky and critical, and to be able to perceive it from a completely different perspective. I'm not able to, when I'm looking at this, to can you read? My old man eyes aren't really reading this so well. So what can you tell what's on the card there? Can you read it to people?
Yeah, I can try. My eyes aren't that great either, but so the first one, the mystery school, under the image there says, "What is my sacred work at the great turning of the ages?" Right. Or at the turning of the ages. And then the priest, do you want to speak on that?
No, I was just going to mention that you can see the imagery of the web and plant growth there happening.
Yes.
And when we speak of the association with Spider Woman, that is tremendously different than what shows up in certain cultures, where spider can sometimes be attributed to a more negative element of maybe the Scorpio mystery school, you know. So it's very, very different imagery regarding Spider Woman. Spider Woman weaves the web of life, and we can see that showing up in both that first card and the second card.
And the line here is alignment with Earth. I don't know, mysteries maybe here. I can't read it as much either, but just trying to bring forward as much as there is, as much as I can see. Sacred service aligned with Earth Mother. Is that the top? And then on the priestess card, High Priestess dedicated to her sacred work. And
Virgo would then be associated with what would be called the priest archetype. And we're obviously not talking about Catholic priests.
Right,
It's that service to spirit through one's sacred work if you're a man.
right. And it also says, I think, I'm sorry, I can't read it either. The sacred work and also in service to the goddess, the
Yeah.
priestess. So, yeah.
And you can see here a rendition of her at the top of the card there, right? So I do certainly love to have people know about our card deck. And I know the gathering we're doing in a few weeks, we're going to have that available there. And we can get it from the school. I mean, I think we still have a bunch of them available.
Oh,
Yeah.
we do. Yes, just contact me. Yep.
Okay, what do you got next coming up here? Yeah, so as I had been saying near the beginning of our conversation, that we're weaving together the signs in the constellations. So there is a constellation that unfortunately, that makes it confusing for people, it's also known as with the same name, the Virgo constellation. But to make sure that people don't get confused about it, we call it the priestess. And it's really interesting that throughout most of the world, this area of the sky is archetypally feminine. There's always imagery, whether it's the ancient goddess or whether it's a more recent rendition of female angels or a virginal Christianized imagery. But this is the patterning of it in the sky, and it's indicating some of the brightest stars of this constellation, which also tends to be, if you're really going by the boundaries of the constellation itself, not the 30-degree thing in the sidereal zodiac, that it's actually the longest of all the constellations. It's something like 45 degrees wide. It covers a very large part of the sky. And that star down at the bottom is Spica. And then those stars that show to the right, that are kind of like which the later artists made into the wings of the angel or the virgin, all have pre-patriarchal significance. There's stars, and this is where Mars is moving through these stars. If you look at the stars to the right, it includes the stars sacred to expanded consciousness, sacred substances, the Vindiametrix. And there's also the star of prophecy in there, named Porama. There's also to the far right is a star named Zanaya, which represents what in the ancient language is called the hierodule, which would have to do with sacred sexuality. So all of those stars there go back to a much more ancient tradition regarding the mysteries of the sacred feminine. And then Spica herself, the central star, the alpha star of the priestess constellation, who Mars will pass over this next week. So Mars is getting instruction from all of these stars at this portion of his journey on his way to the underworld. I have a particular fondness for Spica, as it was the star rising when I was born, and it's actually this union between the sign mysteries of Virgo and the constellational mysteries of the priestess constellation that I would say more than anything, using the techniques of our school, has informed my life. The way in which the mysteries of Libra are involved currently with the stars of the priestess. And now there's been different ways in which artists have projected imagery onto the star pattern. And for example, this is in more recent times how she's represented. And it shows here on her at the end of her left hand. And there's different renditions. Sometimes it's an ear of corn, a shaft of wheat, and it shows the priestess facing forward like this, where spica is not in her body. Actually, when I spent many different workshops that I've done in Bali, they actually have a rendition of her. Actually, I have a version of her right here. That this is one of the primary goddess images in Bali, called Devi Shri. And in her rendition, the rendition they use, she doesn't have an ear of corn or a shaft of wheat, but she has a rice paddy. So it's really like a universal image using this connection with the fecundity of the earth. But this imagery then also has renditions with wings, like a very Christianized version of it. But I like some of the earlier artistic renditions. It's hard to find too many of these. I found these from this website that we're giving credit to here. And if you, on the far left, it shows the priestess facing to the left, and then it has spica right at her root chakra. And actually, even when she's facing forward, the star to the far left, in that sitting version, that's right in her her sexual area. So that those stars, including spica, I think are associated with the first, second, third chakra, and not just when she's facing forward. There's a lot of different ways to see her. And then you can see that those stars that have to do with substances and with prophecy then show up in different parts of her body there. And then on the far right, what were you indicating there with this? This is just another way of seeing how she could be made to be seen, right? Now, another feature of this union of signs and constellations is that there's another really important star group that is right next to her, and that is known as Corvus the Crow. Now, if you go back before the time that Apollo took over the Delphi, that it was actually women, sibyls, priestesses, that had as their oracular familiar crows or ravens. And that's right there in the sky, that there's this trapezoidal figure that are in the middle. Currently, they're in mid-Libra, but they're right next to her. And one can find great images of the priestess with the raven or the crow, which was the bird, the familiar that helped her in her coming up with her prophecies. And we had that image at the very beginning of the presentation, right? Did you freeze up there, Lizzie? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh, did I freeze again?
Yeah, just for a moment. That's okay. It was just for a moment.
I can share this. I can just going to share this other image that Marianna.
Yes. Here's a really good example of it, and the crow is really to her right, so you can turn that around, and it would be the priestess facing toward the crow, and this shows from the other perspective. I just love this, so that in a way the crow or the raven, it would be one of the animals would be associated with the priestess, and it shows up in the sky like that. The stars of the Corvus are like around 13, 14, 11, 12, 13, 14 degrees of Libra. just exactly where Mars is passing through the priestess right now. And hopefully he's getting this training right now on his way to the underworld. So what is the next thing you have coming up there?
About the relationship axis.
Yes, yes. So we do want to have a really great conversation here now regarding how these Virgo mysteries play out in relationship, sexuality, intimacy. Now there's you can actually get more information about this from the Shamanic Astrology Handbook and from a lot of other things that have been written and different blogcasts and other seminars we've done. We are looking at on a chart, and it's only possible if you have a birth time, that if you know the rising sign, then you know the descendant, and there's going to be what we call the relationship axis. And whichever one you're on will give the probably most important clue as to if you're going to be in a long-term committed relationship. Number one, why would you want to do that? And number two, how can you tell if you're on the right track? And the Virgo-Pisces axis, and that could be Pisces rising, it could be Virgo rising, is a very specific relationship path. We call it the path of the helpmate. The priority is to find someone who is equally dedicated to the sacred work. The sacred work is more important than the relationship itself.
Right. There you go. My bad.
What it should say there.
Gosh darn, we were doing so well. Okay.
And the other thing is that how can you tell if you're on the right track in a long-term relationship is that if that relationship makes it easier for you to do what you were born to do. And these days, because represents not the vertical axis, but it's the more horizontal axis, we're talking about collaboration. We're not talking about some old version of relationship that are very much hierarchical, but rather where the two individuals together are making it easier for both in order to do what they were born to do. And it's you can really, that's the way you can determine it, you know. So if it's Virgo rising, Pisces on the descendant, then the partner is providing nourishment, you know. I mean, so there's sort of an equality of helpmates that's taking place here. Not like the patriarchal model where maybe a man can love a woman as long as she's totally and dedicated in service to what he's into. In fact, it's far better to have it be the other way around, actually, so that the feminine principle can learn to be valued for what they do, you know, not just to be wife or mother. This is a very, very important way to determine how you're doing with it, you know. I mean, because if you're there, just there to serve what they're into, I'll give a more modern imagery here. It would be like, let's say you're a singer-songwriter, and a good partner would be the drummer or the manager. The ancient mythic approach to it would be priest and priestess together, where what they're doing together is more important than, oh, I have a husband or a wife on my resume, you know, something like that. Which then brings us to the conversation about the intimacy of Virgo. I'd already mentioned about how there have been these very critical judgments of Virgo, of being cold, picky, critical, hard to please. I want to redefine that and say that it's really about discrimination, and it also has to do with the complexity of what is required for intimacy to happen, because we have to remember that for Virgo, intimacy is something sacred, not secular. And what do I mean by that? I mean, so many people will legitimately get into relationships so they can have the wife or husband on their resume, or to know themselves through another. or you get involved with someone to have a family together. These are all absolutely valid pathways. However, for Virgo, to be genuinely intimate, the sacred space needs to be established. What I have learned over the years by being a guy with Venus in Virgo conjunct Saturn is that for Virgo to be genuinely and truly intimate, all levels of intimacy must be addressed. And it's usually top down. So what I mean by that is spiritual intimacy, intellectual intimacy, emotional intimacy, uh, basically intimacy. And then if the time, all those levels, and then if the timing is right, if sacred space is honored, then the full intimacy can take place. Now, what I've noticed also over the years that many women who, with a strong amount of Virgo, have been judged, I think, quite wrongly, as being too, too picky. It's like their needs are too many, can't be figured out, too complex. And so sometimes women will, and this can happen for some men too. I mean, I'm not just saying this is only about women. We'll get to the male version of it in a moment. Is that a woman might think there's something wrong with me, and so she'll do something to override that discrimination. Alcohol, drugs, something to override that natural discriminative complexity, and it just makes it worse. I've never seen how that can solve the problem, and if it does, just what they think it's a problem, is that they override it, but then they will just go back into judgment of themselves for the violation that took place. This does definitely require a training for men to understand this. Now, let's say we're looking at the male version. Men who, let's say, who have a very strong element in Virgo, Mars in Virgo, Virgo moon, Virgo rising, Virgo sun. I mean, all those different ingredients. Well, 90% of the time, it is true that if you're involved with one of them, they love their work probably more than the relationship. And they might seem not really available for deeper intimacy, because what they love is the patterning of what they do, whether it's, churning out computer code or being in their workshop or any variety of different things that they might consider to be their sacred work. And so they really are frequently not really available. However, there's a new emerging version of the Virgo male. And it's just coming online in these last 30, 40 years. So consider how this might work. So there's a man who is very, very much involved in his sacred work, the complexity of it, the patterning of it. Yeah, he does want his own space. Yes, he does want to work on his different projects, right? But the woman he loves, he learns is more interesting than his work. So basically, he's creating a safe space to learn about her, knowing he'll never be able to really entirely figure it out. But that's okay, because it's something as interesting, if not more interesting, than the other patterns that he seems to be chasing, that he seems to be trying to discern or figure out. So this is really the type of man, as a sacred priest of the goddess, will consider this honoring of the sacred feminine to be his sacred work. I'm noticing that apparently we're having freezing up for a moment. You froze up there, Lizzie, and now it seems that Marianna, where she's living, is frozen up a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm still I'm still here. I'm just gonna turn on and off so that I can keep up with what's being spoken.
Right. And so I want to actually, and I fortunately in my own practice, I've worked with a number of men and women who have this, that go into this version of sacred intimacy. You know, so it's a special category. It's like it's different than secular intimacy, where you're with someone in order to fulfill the requirements of the partner, or to satisfy the marriage vows, or for the sake of having kids. Not that the mother function of having kids is not sacred. It certainly is. It's just that that's a different archetype. The Virgo archetype, what I've noticed over the years is that should they be in a householder situation with children at the time period where they're raising the children, that is their sacred work. But almost always the Virgo archetype will get on to something else. You know, that when the child is raised, you know, then they get on to another expression of their sacred work. From totems to everyone, low, I thought you meant you, oh, that's something, okay, sorry. Right, so this brings up another one of the features of it. And the only other sign, I mean, the only other mystery school that even has this feature is the Aquarian one, but for sure it's with Virgo, the necessity in a healthy way to need one's own space. And so if a man is involved with a woman with Virgo, a lot of Virgo, or the other way around, this is not a neurosis. This is something that is valid for the balancing and the psychic and emotional health of the person who has a lot of Virgo. And yes, they do notice patterning. And when they notice the patterning, that doesn't mean they're being critical. They're just noticing. Now I just keep saying, you know, I've been a champion of Virgo all of these years, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a lot of Virgo and you're in the rest of the world, to come to that point where you recognize not everybody sees it the same way. And so to actually have some compassion for those who don't, and to maybe make some accommodation to the fact that others don't see it the same way. Now, that's asking a lot if the Virgo archetype has never been honored for who they really are. You know, then to expect them to accommodate to the way the rest of the world sees things can be a stretch if they don't get honored relative to their integrity, right? So I would say in some ways, Lizzie and Marianna, that it's really one of the foundational elements of this school is really honoring the Virgo archetype, you know. And I'll just mention from the perspective of a guy who has Venus conjunct Saturn, which means if a man has this, they're being forced to do the sacred marriage work. What does that mean? So if a man has Venus in Virgo, if any Venus position on a man's chart is where he needs to do his sacred marriage work, right? But just like for a woman, if she has Mars in Virgo, I mean, she has to do her sacred work. She can't get off just on being in the slipstream of a partner who has sacred work, right? But for me, and this is what I've been able to train to share with other men with Venus in Virgo, who really is your lover? It's not really that woman you're with. It's actually that one woman. It is Gaia herself. And when I recognized that some years ago, it was just a tremendous breakthrough. And I realized that through my whole life, even when I felt that I was being rejected by Virgo women, is that actually she has been with me from the very beginning. That every time I find a sacred site and feel that that thrill at the back of that chill that goes up the back of my neck, that's her saying, yes, you have found me. Now please recognize me for who I am. And it's really wrong to project that whole thing onto any living woman. Now you can honor that woman for the sacredness of her pattern, but that is not who Virgo is. There is this shaman that I used to work with during one of my trips to Africa, and he's still out there as far as I know. I met him in Zimbabwe, and every time he did a ceremony, he would always begin the ceremony with a statement, and I feel so much gratitude for that one woman. and I knew for sure what he was referring to. It's Gaia herself, as being the lover of men who have Venus in Virgo, if they can do their sacred marriage work. And then likewise for women with Mars in Virgo, which is to know that their own identification with their own sacred work is the key, not to be the foil of some partner's sacred work. And then you can do it together, right? Are you there, Mariana? I'm sure you must have some comments to make.
I do. I have a few comments because, that part has been really challenging for me because I have Mars in Libra conjunct Saturn and Pluto. And
Yes.
so, I've had this pattern to find myself through another. That's what I project. That's what I long for. And then I seem to get into relationships and it takes me away from my Virgo. And also I'm not truly seen for who I am because I've been caught up people pleasing many times. And so it's been a repeat pattern for me. And, it's been a lot to recognize how much alone time I really need. And I also have Venus in Capricorn that squares that. And so I've done all the regular, householder wife duties. I was a wife and I had children, and yes, my work has changed. And it's all been sacred and it's in its own pattern in its way, but leading to Virgo rising has been really interesting with all the side turns that I take along the way, and really cultivating that intimacy with seeing myself the way I view it with Virgo rising, as seeing myself and the earth as a mirror, that is part of my inner relationship with myself, to be my own best friend with Mars and Libra. And I find that through my sacred work, through Gaia, through, the patternings that are available, and also seeing the patterns that I have within relationships that now I can give to the earth.
Yeah, right. And in your case, it was a journey to get to the point where all life questions can be answered by applying it to the Virgo rising. If it can't go through Virgo rising, then you're still dealing with shadow or honest mistakes relative to the challenges you've had with the Libra part of the chart. Me too, by the way. Me too.
Yeah, Libra rising. And for me, that one simple question has been so liberating. Does this contribute to my sacred work? Does this take me away from my sacred work? And the moment that it does, I'm noticing I get tossed in the underworld. And I get butt up against limitations, and I'm definitely not seen for who I am or honored for who I am, but I'm not doing it for myself. And that's that Libra part.
I think then for you, Lizzie, it's more been a situation of a soul retrieval.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Being able to reconnect to that wholeness and one unto yourself as a Virgo lineage priestess.
Yes, because I have a lot of that, like Mariana said, the people pleasing for me, Piscean quality pulling on the other side. I have a lot happening in Pisces and Virgo, and so it's been difficult to become that one unto myself.
Very hard.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that other piece that Daniel brought in is a big one, always thinking that there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Because we're so analytical and do see the patterns and do see all the little things, and we try to fix them because we want to bring them into balance and harmony, and we think it's our fault.
Well, no, I might even be sure it's theirs, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
That too. That
bode
too.
very well for peace in a relationship. And I'm like, hey, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
You know, so
And then I've got that Aquarius piece, so I don't really say anything about it until it's just so in my face.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's I told Daniel when he was here last time, it's gonna be hard, Daniel. It's gonna be hard because of all those things. But yeah, actually coming to terms with, well, maybe that, and I can see. And the first time I was even approached was shamanic astrology, John DeMoss, and he used that word, the renunciate path. And while at the beginning I was like, oh, what? I mean, that one spark of a moment, it wasn't a thought even, just, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm going to be alone, but it felt right also. you know?
Yeah, there's like this
What, yeah,
acceptance.
what you're bringing up there is, it could have been said there when we were looking at the basic way in which we look at the mystery school, is that there is an ancient way of categorizing human beings between renunciate and householder, culture bearer. And it actually historically Virgo, along with Sag Moon, those two, Virgo Moon, Sag Moon, were in that renunciate category, meaning that they were not partaking in secular affairs. But that was a time in history basically where they were honored for that.
Right,
They would not have to have a business plan. I mean, so whatever their skill was in service to spirit, there was an honoring of that. And so the culture needed their priestesses. They needed, for men, they needed their blacksmiths. They needed their herbologists. They needed their alchemists. I mean, basically there was a place for those that had dedicated themselves in service to spirit and maybe would choose not to marry and have kids. Now this has changed now, where I mean, I can remember back in the early 70s, there was an author, Marion Zimmer Bradley, and her books, they're probably some of the best books ever written about Virgo. But what her whole point was is that at this time in history, the old belief that if you were a renunciate and then you could not be a householder because basically you would blow out your spiritual circuits. I mean, there's a book called Initiation. It was written in the 70s that really did a lot of damage because it was basically saying that if you become a high priestess and then you have sex, you might have to go through 200 lifetimes before you get back to the starting point. Incredibly damaging. And so in our time now, basically there is the possibility of being in service to spirit. In the old days, what would have been called a renunciate, but then to be in the world and have relationships. That's because the times have changed. I mean, it's not separated out like that anymore. So these are all the kinds of things that for further research. I used to always, when I would have clients that had a lot of Virgo, I'd say, read these Marion Zimmer Bradley books. It's best known for her book called the Mists of Avalon, but she had a whole series of books that delve deeply into the Virgo mysteries and also the Libra mysteries, interestingly. There's we're in the midst of a big change here. And so what I'm trying to bring up about Virgo intimacy, that doesn't confine you to being a renunciate. It's about how to honor who you are without judgment and not to receive those still in the mainstream negative criticisms about Virgo. And we'll see. Go ahead, Lizzie.
that's what I was going to kind of bring up too. It is a soul retrieval. It is learning, because you say, right, we take about a third of our moon, right? And how does it serve and use our current life purpose? And obviously I'm meant to with the North Node there. But he also brought up in the first reading, like creating sacred space and like, where I live in this dome and I've got the crystals around and all that. And I find that I'm, one person's picky is another person's discriminating or whatever, but I want things a certain way, and that doesn't always bode well for someone else being here.
Well,
And
right. And Mariana's, I mean, it's too bad we're not able to see her right now, but I mean, my goodness, is that ever a temple space that she's got?
And when we were talking about it too, and the words that come up for Virgo, picky and analytical and critical and all of those things. But frankly, from where I don't know, I'm sure I'm speaking Marianna for Marianna a little bit here too. From where we've come from, we need to be using some of that,
Absolutely. And I have like altars all over my house. Like everything is a sacred space to me.
Yeah.
And look at all of your herbs there, as our plant priestess there, right? And yes, fantastic. So we actually have, there's this song that I like to think of as the Virgo song. And for many, many years, particularly back in the years when we had many, many more in-person events, we'd sit around the campfire and share songs. And this was a song I learned back in the 80s, actually. And I've always loved it. I mean, there's different renditions of this song. It's kind of a traditional song. And there are you can look online and just different artists have done different styles of music for this and different renditions of it. I will try to do it slight justice. I'm not a singer, but I love this song as the Virgo song, and it really captures her essence. There is a woman who weaves the night sky. See her spin, see her fingers fly. She is within us beginning to end. Our grandmother's sister and friend. She is the weaver and we are the web. She is the needle and we are the thread. She changes everything she touches. Everything she touches changes. And then, of course, different renditions of it go into different jams at that particular point. But those lyrics really speak of her mystery as the spinner of the web of life that we are part of, and we co-create with the spinning of that web. So there's so much more that can be touched upon. Like, for example, those of you who are listening, you might wonder, do I have any parts of my chart that are connected to these sacred stars of the priestess? Well, anyone who has something strong in Libra is actually being influenced, getting transmissions from the stars of the priestess constellation. So it's actually a certain way that there's a transmission happening there. Anyone who has those latter degrees of Libra are going to have Mars passing through and near the star Spica, the central star of the mysteries of the sacred feminine. The earlier degrees of Libra are with Corvus the crow, the oracular bird, with these sacred stars of the hierodule, sacred sexualities, substances that produce altered states, and then also the prophecy aspect of the star Porrima. My hope is that the sacred masculine at this point, who's on his journey to the underworld in the overstory of Cancer, is taking these teachings and receiving the blessings of the sacred feminine by being open to her before he journeys into the underworld in November. Let's see if we have anything more we want to share about Virgo in intimacy. We've done the song, the card imagery.
Daniel, can I ask a question? Can you go into the meaning of the stars of the crow?
I don't no, I'm not aware of that as far as any specific story about each of the stars. No. Have you found anything on that?
I haven't. I mean, I know the teachings of Porrima and Spica, but I was just wondering because there is so much imagery with the crow. As far as I don't know, I was kind of wondering if that had more of an underworld connotation in terms of Virgo understanding all three worlds as sacred in the patterning, especially when it comes to sovereignty and discovering one's own unconscious and patterns. I was just wondering if you had any insight on that.
Well, I believe your own Libra planets are probably in alignment with her.
Yes, they are. That's that's why I'm asking.
Well, I mean, I know I know that one of the main star of the trapezoid, which is really quite a clear represent. You can see it clearly in the sky to the right of the priestess. Um, I think that's what Algorab is its name. You've sparked my own curiosity to see if there's any lore on those specific stars of the crow. But what I do connect with is from what you said is that if that crow is a oracular bird, if that raven is the familiar for the priestess, right, then basically that bird is assisting her in the journeys that she needs to go on to be able to be a priestess, including to the underworld and the middle world and the transcendent, and
Right.
particularly.
It just seems like such a symbol
Mhm.
of the journey itself, of the initiation of itself.
Right, and that was how it was with the Sibyls and the oracular priestesses before it was taken over by the masculine version of intelligence. Because I just thought of something that this brings up that I wanted to bring in. That Virgo is, yes, analytical. Yes, it is left brain, but it's the left brain of the goddess. And that's a very, very different version of analysis than that shows up in the thinking function. So it's the earth-based version of the patterning that can happen from the analytical mind. And I think that is a really important distinction, which is why I don't really think of our normal understanding of Mercury as being associated with Virgo. I think Mercury, as we normally see it, is much more Gemini, not Virgo. And so that traditional attribution of Mercury to maybe Mercury in Virgo, maybe, but not Mercury per se as being a quote ruler, a resonant with Virgo.
And
So
I
it's the
think that that's where Virgo has gotten a lot of its shadow connotations from, is from that rulership.
yeah.
Because I feel like it's such a complex sign to try to explain that it's just developed a whole nother definition with Mercury being the ruler when it has, yeah, like you said, I feel like doesn't have much to do with it. And yes, it is very analytical, but in a very different way.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to perceive and and cognize the pattern of Gaia herself, I mean, that's different than and by the way, that includes the stars, the patterning that we see with our senses of the starry patterns. I mean, that's I've looked at that over the years. It seems to be the combination when you look at the stars of the mapping of the sky, which can have something to do with Sagittarius, but Virgo is actually also the weaver of the patterning of the night sky that we see with our senses.
Right. And it's truly felt, is that connection. It's not just mentalized. It comes from
Right.
feeling.
Well, and
Indeed.
that's, I was just gonna say that, loving the patterning is also why we love shamanic astrology, Daniel, because you get us out under that and studying those patterns in the sky.
Yeah.
So this has been a great investigation, and I think just as yeah, go ahead.
I want to bring up one more point before we go, because we talked about it before, and I want you to kind of speak to it a little bit, because if what we call the opposite sign is,
Yeah.
we refer to it more as resonant polarity, and it could just be because my own Pisces stellium, but I feel like it's also that kind of what we talked about, that statement that says it's not that Virgo doesn't feel deeply, because that's the resonant polarity. It actually does feel deeply, right? Because I think that also adds into the perception of Virgo being so picky and analytical, because we're able to be there, like we're able to be in that witness spot, of recognizing the patterns, but it's not that we don't feel deeply. So I'd like for you to maybe speak.
Well, just yeah, I mean, it's a very important point because if the Virgo, male or female, is honored in that complexity and in that sacred space and with sacred timings, in my own experience, I don't know of any astrological archetype more capable of comprehensive intimacy than Virgo. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and say that. You know, I mean, it's not easily gotten to because of a lack of appreciation of the complexity of how intimacy can happen. And I'm not just talking about women right now. I'm talking about also the potentiality for men with the Mars art with the Virgo archetype to have the same thing happen if they get any kind of positive feedback for these other aspects of themselves.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Yeah.
Uh,
Complex.
so I think it's kind of as a novelty here, just for our own entertainment, because there's large amounts of jokes over the years that are made about Virgo, and Lizzie actually found some really wonderful ones. So as we close off this video blog for today, let's share these with you. I think you'll.
There we go. And we
Yeah.
spoke to a lot of these points, but you know, now they're put into something that's funny at least. We need a little levity, the Virgos do. So here we go.
God, where's my soulmate? God, first of all, I sent you the one, and you don't like the way he chewed his food. Yes.
Yeah. And the Virgos start laughing. And here she's like finding it very sexy that they know the difference between there, and there. Yeah.
You're so quiet. I wish you were too. The classic square between those two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except that this was the only one of them that I had a little quibble with. He says, I notice everything, I just act like I don't. Well, that might be a more polite thing, because actually much of the Virgo types I've been around, they have no problem
Right.
letting me know everything they notice. All right, so.
I know,
I
right? Maybe,
really like this one, but I also have Sun and Mercury in Aquarius, so
yeah. Yeah.
that one was my favorite.
No, I've been actually benefited over the years by women who were not afraid to tell me what they noticed.
Yeah. Well, you might be rare, Daniel. I don't know.
Yeah, but you're also Libra rising, Daniel.
Yeah. There's that part.
It took a long time. I still took it personally, you know. So I mean, it took a while for me to realize. Thank you for pointing these things out. I needed that. Right?
This is what I liked too. Nobody said anything. But see, that's why I don't like you.
This is magnificent. This one.
You were just talking about the complexity, you know?
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Me waiting for a relationship when someone likes me.
It's not going to be just right, so I think I'm not even going to try. I don't know, Marianna and I both really, I think. Yeah.
Can't breathe. Yes. Lynn really loved this one, and Virgo's face 90%, 7% of the day. It's really true, actually.
I know.
It's very true.
There's another one.
And this is, of course, something also she related to as it's kind of the Cassandra complex. You know,
Yeah.
you can see it all. You know, the Sybil that sees it, and then they're either you're told you're crazy, or they pillory you and send you out and kill the messenger. You know.
Exactly. Relate to that one too. There you go. Virgo mantra, thank you for lovely advice, but I'm not going to take it. I literally had that experience last week. Thank you. I might listen.
Mhm. And yet I was suggesting the other side of the story, which was that it's actually sometimes good to hear what the feedback is, so you can at least know that others are not seeing it the same way.
No, yes, I'm working on it. And I've done this. I was like, is that me?
No way I'm going to listen to that song, right?
My time in the shower is sacred. I'm not wasting it listening to that. And then I think this actually looks like my mountains in a way. Yeah.
My only comment on this is that actually it's a misnomer that every Virgo type has an immaculately clean space. No,
Right.
they just know what their own pattern is in that space. So you'll notice the three of us are we don't have a Zen space, you know, it's very complex, and but we know why it's there. There's a reason for everything that's there.
Well, I'll tell you related to this meme real quick, a Virgo soul retrieval moment I had years ago when I was cleaning, and in this relationship and not living my own thing, certainly not unto myself. And I had this realization moment. I kind of was like, got up from the vacuum cleaner or whatever and said, what am I not doing because my house is so clean?
Right.
That realization of like, what am I not,
Interesting.
so yeah, related to that one too.
So, are you able to get back on video for just a moment as we close this off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See if it holds. Yeah.
So I just love the fact that I got to share this time with two of my favorite Virgo goddesses here, you know. So thank you for being part of this, and I hope we all had a good time with this, and that this has sparked deeper inquiry out there regarding the Virgo Enigma.
Thank you, Daniel. And I'm going to be doing my own research on the crow. And it was
Good.
lovely to be here with both of you guys.
Thanks, Marianna. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, bye.